Welcome to The Alignment Show, featuring conversations with folks who have taken steps to identify their highest values and align their lives around them. Time on this earth is not unlimited, and you may be seeking to make sure you spend your time on things that matter to you. These conversations will encourage you and support you in doing so. Now, let's meet this week's guest on The Alignment Show. And good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever time it is in your part of the world. Welcome once again to The Alignment Show. My name is Don King. I will be your host this morning. And we have a guest who is coming back for part two. It wasn't too long ago she was on the show, and we just realized we had a lot more to talk about. So we're bringing back Channie Marston. I will introduce her in just a moment, especially for those of you who were not with us earlier. Although in our show notes, which you can see crawling across the bottom here, confidencecultivators.com, we will link to that previous episode so that you can kind of keep up with things and continue with that. As we get started here today, though, I want to remind you about a couple of things. One, our regular sponsor that we have here on the show, the Go Giver Success Alliance. We will again have links in the show notes, especially for those of you who are on here audio only. Got a QR code up on the video for those of you who are watching. The Go Giver Success Alliance is just a fantastic community of people who are supporting each other in being go-givers. Now, this is not in contrast to go-getters. Go-getters are energetic people. Everybody that I know that's in this group is a go-getter, but they're not focused on taking. They're not go-takers. The focus is on providing value. Bob Berg, who is one of the founders of the group, along with Kathy Tejanel, he says that success comes along like thunder to lightning. It's an effect, and the lightning is giving value. So the Go Giver Success Alliance will support you in that. One of the ways I try to give value to the world is through my books. And so I would encourage you to go check out donking.com/books. You'll find a couple of them there right now. I've got 3 more that are in process, and all of them are aimed at helping you to live your values and value your life. So with that, it's my pleasure to bring on once again Channie Marston. Now, I've been getting to know Channie locally over the last several months. She's a member of the Morning Cup Toastmasters Club, which I'm active in. And one of the things that strikes me about Channie is that I hear constantly from her is, what can I do to help? And so Channie is truly a go-giver herself. She describes her work now as championing, it's hard to say, being a champion with you through the beautiful journey of elderhood. And so she's got a book that is out. She's got a book coming up. We've got a lot of things to talk about, but we will get into that as we dig into further conversation with Channie Marston. Channie, welcome back once again to The Alignment Show.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
And without just picking up exactly where we left off last time, I mean, one of the things that when I asked you about your values alignment, you said a couple of aha moments, but really it's been a series of events over the years where you've had a hard dose of reality and then intentionally pivoted, which to me is pretty impressive all by itself without even knowing what the details are. I think may have mentioned on your episode, but for sure I've said before, my tendency is to catastrophize, and I can overcome that consciously, but it's not my natural bent. So is it your natural bent when things go sideways to take a step back and just figure out, how do I pivot, what to do next, or where did that come from?
That's kind of a loaded question there, because I don't know exactly where it comes from. This is one of those things that keeps me up at night. Like, how did I get here? One of the things that is really evident to me is that, well, let me back up.
Let's give some examples as you're going there. That'll help put it in context.
Yes. I think when you're a kid, things happen to you, and you they just happen. That's just life. That's just how it is as a kid. But when you get to be an adult and you're able to look back on those events that happened, that's when you can add in the reason or the problem solving and say, you know, that happened, and then you can assess whether it was a good thing or a bad thing, or maybe neither one of those, but how you then want to move forward with your life. And when we were talking and I said, I had this series of events that happen, you don't know as a kid how those things are going to shape you when you're older. And that could be how we function in relationships, or what our relationship with money is. You don't really know until you get to be an adult and you're able to reflect back on those things. And while a lot of my early childhood experiences definitely shaped who I am, it has certainly taken an adult perspective reflecting backwards to say, do I have to continue that? Or
Mhm.
assessing that and looking at that. And that's where, the term that you're hearing these days is generational curses, breaking generational curses, or like it stops with me.
Mhm.
And so I've spent a lifetime, it feels like, um, looking at those early childhood things and assessing them for whether I want to conduct my life that way, and seriously focusing on breaking generational curses.
Mhm. Yeah, can you give me an example of maybe one of those flexion points?
Absolutely, I
And
can.
and at the time, did you realize that it was a, how shall I put it quickly? We can't control our circumstances, but we can decide how to respond to them. So
Yes,
did
yes.
you know at the time that your decision was part of that flexion, if that makes sense?
So I'll give you an example. And no, at the time I did not. Now I realize it, but at the time I did not. So I was a young single mom. I was working in healthcare as a CNA, living in a suburb of Denver, and it was getting to be Christmas time. So I had two young boys, probably 2 and 4-ish, I would say. And I had been doing my best to like save up to give them a good Christmas. I had been working for probably 6 or 8 months, picking up little things and hiding them in my closet so that I could ensure that my kids had a good Christmas that year. And Christmas came, and they were so excited and so pleased with everything they got. And I sat back and looked at that. And while I was proud that I was able to give that to my kids, I also realized that that struggle that I was having and the Christmas that I was able to give to them was the best that it was ever going to be. And I
Mm.
had like this tightening in my throat all of a sudden, because I that thought was coupled with, they're 2 and 4. They don't realize that those toys came from the dollar store. When they're 12 and 14, knockoff GI Joes are not going to cut it. Do you understand the example that I'm
Mhm.
that I'm giving you?
Yes,
And
yes.
so I had this panic of, this is as good as it's going to get if I don't do something. I have got to do something. Like, this is not, I can't continue to do this and have this be the best that our lives are ever going to be. And so that was kind of this seed that got planted in my own spirit, to be able to begin to have those thoughts about wanting something more, better, and different. I didn't
Mm.
realize it at the time, but that was essentially breaking one of those generational curses, because I was well on my way to being like third generation welfare recipient at that point.
Uh,
And looking at it now from my adult perspective, 25 years later, that was the beginning of breaking out of that. um, well, it's my opinion that in a lot of ways social services are a little bit of a trap. And I have
mhm.
stories about that too. We can talk about those things if you would like to, but it was the beginning of me breaking out of that. And it wasn't easy. It was really difficult, really difficult.
Mm. There's there's a level at which if you earn more money, the social services stop, but it's not yet enough to live on. So not only here's the complex question, not only how did you bridge that gap, but what advice would you have for somebody who may be facing that same decision right now? And I couldn't tell you quite what it is in our community. I know that, like, for instance, at $14 an hour, you can still qualify for certain services. It takes in our area right now, I think the last figure I saw, you know what Alice is, and I'm not going to take the time to explain it for our audience, but well, a little bit of explanation. Alice is not just the poverty level from the federal government, which is meaningless. It's looking at what it takes to live in a particular community with I can't think how many people in the household, but regardless, the Alice level, I think, for our area is around $25. And if you know differently, Shani, please let me know. Um, and so there's that gap between, I don't know, $18 an hour where it would be cut off and the $25 an hour that you actually need. So this is a
You know,
complex question. It doesn't have
it
an
is.
easy answer, but
It doesn't. It doesn't. I will tell you, I'll give you two examples of exactly what I faced during this time. So shortly after that Christmas, I did enroll in college. I wanted to become an occupational therapy assistant. And at that time I was receiving food stamps, and went ahead and went down to the office and said, hey, I'm trying to go to school. I'm going to have to cut my hours, but this is the program I'm in, yada yada yada. So went through the whole entire process. The caseworker was like, oh my gosh, you're going to be able to get blah and blah and blah and blah. And I just was thinking, oh my gosh, like what a godsend, what a relief. Like, this process is actually doable for me, right? I mean, it wasn't like I wasn't going to be sitting high and mighty. I wasn't going to be sitting pretty with what they were able to give me, but it was going to be able to give me some relief so that I could go to college, get a degree, and then provide better for my family. And we got to the very end of it, and she said, "Oh, I didn't realize that you had a car." And I'm like, yeah, is that a problem? And it was just a little, three banger Geo Metro from back in the day. And it was, I don't know, 2 or 3 years old. No, it was not anything exciting. And she said, well, your car is too new for you to be able to qualify for these things. And I said, my car's too new. Like, how can that be? And she said, well, just give up your car. And then I said, well, if I give up my car, I can't get to work. Like, I have to work. Like, I want to work. And she said, well, if you gave up your car and you didn't work, you would get more benefits. And that incensed me. That incensed me. Even at that young, tender age, and not really even knowing how the world works, right? I couldn't comprehend what she was saying. Don't work. Don't try to be independent. Give up this car so you give up more of your independence, and we will give you more. Like, it just, I couldn't comprehend that. And so I left there determined not to give up my car, more determined to make it on my own with my $186 a month in food stamps. And that's what I did for the next 2 years. So while I was working on my degree, that last year that I was in college, I made $10,500 for the year. When I graduated college, I took a job in California, and my salary was $34,000 a year. Holy cow, I thought that was a lot of money. Now, this was 1997, so
it was more back then. But
yes. But I didn't qualify for anything at that point. No food stamps, even nothing. But my quality of life did not change. It was the same exact struggle going from $10,500 with, food stamps, that $187 a month, to making $34,000 a year, whatever that comes out to a month.
Mm.
It was tremendously difficult, tremendously. And what I ended up having to do was I worked my full-time job, but I also took a part-time weekend job working 8 hours in addition just to have a little bit extra.
Mhm.
So that first couple of years was incredibly difficult, but as I kind of navigated the career world and got better at negotiating my worth and my value and jobs, and I almost always worked two little jobs in the healthcare world. It's called a PRN job. So you'd have your full-time job and then you would have a PRN job. I almost always did that just because I kind of wanted to have my, yes, the money was nice, but have my foot into someplace else just to know what was out there, to know what other therapists were making and kind of build those connections. But to speak to your question, that difficulty those first 2 years really, really made me question, was it all worth it?
Mm.
Should
Yeah.
I should I have sought a higher degree? Should I have given up my car and all of that and and
So
let
that's going both ways with that. I mean,
yes, yes. But I had so much trouble in those first couple of years after that. It still felt like I was in a trap, right? But
mm,
after that it kind of I kind of leveled off. I ended up moving to Illinois eventually and found that the job I had taken, the wages were relatively high, the cost of living for where I was relatively low, and I finally was able to feel like I was out of that welfare trap, like
mm,
completely. Like I didn't need it, wasn't going to rely on it. It was something of the past. And for the first time in my life, I really felt the freedom that comes with being 100% self reliant.
mm. Yeah, it's hard to put a dollar figure on that feeling.
Yes. Yes. It was still a struggle. I was still a single mom. I had these two getting to be teenage boys, and the the payoff for that was just that it was me. I was good. Didn't rely on anyone for anything. That feeling of independence is immeasurable.
Mm, mm. How many years total? That's at least 4 years there, maybe 5. When you're up to your neck in alligators, it's hard to remember your objective was to drain the swamp.
Yes.
Did you have a sense that there would be an end? Or during those 4 years, maybe those last 2 years in particular, when you're questioning, okay, I went to all this effort, I went to college and made this move, or I guess this is prior to the move, but still, um, is there an end in sight? Is it just always going to be like this? What sustained you through that, that kept you from going back to the welfare thing?
Well, I think having perspective about what that kind of life was like before
Mm,
lends to that, but also the idea of having hopes and dreams and the ability to set goals. So luckily I have had good people in my life, just a good support system, good friends, good church family that I could rely on and say, "Hey, look, this is how I'm feeling, but this is also what I'm thinking." And then being able to reason through that with people who I respected and could help walk me through that process. And luckily I knock on wood, but I've never struggled with drugs or alcohol. And I think that
mm,
those two things have been really pivotal because I've had people in my life who that's just a struggle for them. Excuse me.
mm. Yeah,
And
yeah.
so luckily that wasn't a thing. And I've
And,
also
and,
relied
and
on
let me probe that just a little bit here, because so many people who are under the kind of pressure you were describing would get into alcohol or perhaps drugs as sort of I don't know, self medication kind of thing, just to give me some relief today. Yeah. And of course,
Mhm.
then that starts a vicious cycle.
Mhm.
So here's where I'm probing a bit. Was it beer tasted so bad it just wasn't a temptation? Was it that you were willing to put up with the pain? Do you see where I'm going with
I
that?
do. I do. And I will tell you, while I might not have been addicted to drugs or alcohol, I probably have been addicted to food in the past.
Mm.
And maybe even currently, I love to eat. I really love to eat, and it doesn't help that I'm a good cook. So so I have that kind of working against me.
Yeah.
But so cautionary tale, I have a strong genetic predisposition for addiction. It is rampant in my family. And especially given the Native American side of things, we know alcoholism amongst that group of people is really really profound, and there's a genetic reason for that. Um, and just in case people don't know, the component there is that um, indigenous people don't have the enzyme necessary to process alcohol. So the effects of alcohol hit you sooner, stronger, and last longer, right? So for Europeans, where alcohol is native to that land, they have those built into their system, like they can process the alcohol. So conversely, Europeans have a hard time processing corn. It's the same idea. Europeans don't have the enzyme necessary to process corn. Corn is native to America, so that's the contrast there. But I have always been, um, I've been able to critically look at that even as a child and say, that's not what I want.
Mm.
That's not right. There's something not right with that. I don't want that. So even as a child, I knew that. And that's not to say that as a teenager in my 20s, I didn't experiment. We
Mhm.
all have. But it was enough for me to say, I don't like this. This is not
Mhm.
for me. But I also had the childhood experience of being responsible for a lot of my younger siblings when I was very, very young, very young. And if you know, I'm, third oldest of 14 kids. So there were a lot of kids to take care of.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of lent to who I became as an adult, just this vein of responsibility that kind of runs through me, that I don't want to sleep all day. I don't want to be impacted by what I'm drinking or smoking, and have my kids be impacted by that too.
Mhm. Mhm. That makes sense. In fact, if I can tie that with something that you said in an email, you were talking about that your current project is reassessing your business goals as the second quarter is winding down and trying to figure out ways to help more people. You are either by nature or by environment a caretaker. But you said I'm also trying to take a slight step back and balance my free time. I'd like to intentionally do more things that I love, like gardening and cycling. I'm interpreting that to say I've been taking care of everybody else my whole life. I need to take care of
Mhm,
me a little bit. Is that an
mhm.
accurate way to put it?
That is definitely an accurate way to put it. Excuse me. Yes, I have been trying to think about this idea of like a work life balance, and the big thing right now is, though, there's no such thing, right?
Mm. Yeah,
And
yeah.
there may be no such thing. There may be something, but here's what I do know. I I've learned about self-care within the last probably 15 years, and just how important that is. And that looks different for everyone. So what you're doing to take care of yourself is probably going to be way different than what I'm doing. But for me, I have to get good sleep. If not, I am a terrible human being. And and I love nature. I really love nature. I love having my hands in the dirt. I and there again, there are reasons for that we're finding out scientifically now. There are uh, antidepressant bacteria that are found in soil, and so that's why we all feel so good when we get in the dirt. because those bacteria are just like, they're like feel good bacterias for your brain and your body. And I noticed that when I don't intentionally get myself out in nature, when I'm not walking barefoot in my yard, when I'm not gardening, I'm kind of a grump. And it's almost like getting out in nature, doing some hiking or kayaking or cycling, that kind of fixes me. It replenishes me and then makes me feel more even keeled to be able to address the things that I need to do in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like in terms of self-care, you have to show up for yourself. And in terms of what your goals are, if it is your goal to have good teeth into your 80s, you have to get up, show up for yourself, and take care of your teeth when you're in your 20s, your 30s, and beyond. So if you're not showing up for your own self to meet your goals, how can you show up for anybody else?
Mm.
And while I'm trying to care and love and be this person for the people that I serve, I realize that I also have to serve myself.
That's a great insight. Too many people, I don't know if it's a cultural thing or what, the idea of self sacrifice.
Mhm.
This is not an either or thing we're talking about. You're not either being selfish or giving everything up and serving everybody else.
Right.
In fact, I'll tie it in. We mentioned the Go Giver, starting the episode. One of the things that I hear Bob Berg talking about is, if you're breathing, if I say to you, Channie, exhale, just keep exhaling, keep going, keep going. You can probably keep that up for maybe 30 seconds. You have to inhale eventually.
You do. You do.
And you're not just going to be inhaling either. It's an inhaling and an exhaling.
Mhm.
And that's the healthiest thing to be physically. So it sounds like you have figured out something important there spiritually, mentally, however you would put it. Is this what enables you to give to people more effectively? It's kind of an obvious question, I guess, but when did you realize that?
I get a lot of satisfaction from feeling productive. I like working. I have probably been that way since a kid, since I was a child. I really I was the worker bee. Like if you break out my siblings in terms of what their role was in the family, I was the worker bee. A lot of times it was, someone gave me a job or a role. But a lot of times it was also self-appointed. And so I think I just come by that naturally. However, I also want to feel purposeful and I want to have a positive outcome because you can do work, you can do busy work that really means nothing at the end of the day. Like if you're just trying to keep yourself busy, I can do that. But it's not fulfilling. It's really not fulfilling. As I have gotten older, I realize looking back that one of the reasons I have felt so fulfilled in my work with the elderly is that human component, that human connection. And I say that with this caveat. I know that I am quirky and I am silly, and I kind of embrace that side of myself. And I think we talked about this last time a little bit, but the elderly are so forgiving of that. And maybe it's just that they've lived a life and they understand what it is to just embrace someone for who they are. So they've really kind of accepted those quirks and that weirdness of who I am, just kind of with open arms. And when I think about the work that I have done, that is where I am most fulfilled. And I want
Mm.
more of that. It's almost like a drug. It's almost like I can't imagine not having that connection and not getting that love and that energy back. Does that
Mm,
answer your
mm.
question?
Yes, yes. In fact, it's leading to two other competing questions here. Trying to decide which one to get out there first. Um, okay, we'll go with this one. What is the line between workaholism where you're using work to numb pain and taking delight and satisfaction in your work.
Well, you hit on something earlier when you said essentially this idea of like working yourself there. We all get value from working ourselves to death. I'm paraphrasing here. That wasn't exactly what
Yeah,
you said,
yeah.
but it's almost a societal thing. And I find that we all it's almost like a badge of honor to say how tired we are or how busy we are or how hard we're working. And you're right, because I think that in some ways I can very much be a workaholic. I have an interesting perspective about work. I I do like to work. Again, I get great satisfaction from working. I don't want to I did this way too much as a single parent. I don't want to compromise my relationship with my loved ones any longer.
Yeah.
And I think that's a choice that I made for a while because I was the only household provider, because it all did fall on me. And hopefully my boys know that I had to make that decision. I was sacrificing that for them. Hopefully now they know how much I love them and it wasn't about them at all. It was about being the provider. But as I get older, I do realize that nobody is going to come to your funeral and talk about how many hours you worked in a week. It doesn't, that's not the thing. That's not the thing. So what do I want to be known for? I want to be known as someone who was giving and loving and said, "How can I help?" Or for people to know, "I'm here for you to help you when you're ready." It's a constant thing for me to be able to say, and now especially because I'm my own boss, to be able to say, "You know what? I'm the boss. It's 4 p.m. We're good. Like I'm good. I've done enough for today. My to-do list will still be there tomorrow." What advice do I have for someone who might be, walking that line of being a workaholic? I don't know. It's probably different for everyone, right? We all make those choices. And luckily I'm in a spot now where I feel like, yeah, fire me. you know, fire fire me. And if I'm the boss, I guess I just fired myself, like I want to cuddle up with those grandbabies. That's more important. I want to go to lunch with my kids. That's probably more important. And then just being able to find that balance, whatever that looks like for you. Because again, it's going to be different for every person. What your recipe is going to be way different than mine.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. But the competing question, which was look at how the older people are more accepting of your quirkiness. As someone who's getting older myself, I can tell you that I've reached a point in my life where I just don't care that much what other people think about me,
Hmm.
and so a lot of older people can get quirky because we quit worrying about what somebody's going to think. Do you think that acceptance of their own quirkiness is what allows them to relate to your quirkiness, to maybe say, yeah, you go, girl. Do it while you're younger.
Yes, I do.
Does that make sense? Okay.
It
Yeah.
does. It does. And we talked a little bit about that last time about how the part of the brain that controls inhibitions deteriorates with age. And I
Mhm.
do wonder sometimes if that has something to do with it. But I think also the elderly have figured it out, whether they consciously realize that they figured it out or not. But they have really figured out that relationships and connections are vitally important.
Mm.
I think and when so I'm gonna speak mostly about like the nursing home setting because that's where the majority of my career has been. We
Mm.
see such loneliness, such touch deprivation, and when someone comes into their life, a therapist, a CNA, a nurse, who is very ready, willing, and able to give that connection of a hug or sharing a joke or sitting down with them. I mean, like really sitting down with them while they take their medication, or really sitting down for 5 minutes and watching this segment of whatever show, right? Those types of connections are what they are so hungry for.
Mm.
And in my career, I've really struggled, really worked to have that with the people that I have served. And so maybe that's what it is. They feel a stronger connection because I have worked harder to do that. And then therefore they're just more willing to accept my quirkiness. I don't know.
I would think, as Microsoft would say, it's not a bug, it's a feature. That's probably what
Oh,
helps them to relate to you.
probably. Probably. And not everything that I've ever had to say to someone. Sometimes it's my job to say, you're not able to go home, but to have that relatability and that background of love and connection sometimes softens that blow a little bit. I don't always get to be the deliverer of great news. Sometimes I do,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
sometimes I don't. And I feel like it's so much better if I were receiving it, or if my grandma were receiving that news. I'd want it to be coming from somebody who had a genuine care for my
Hmm,
loved one.
hmm. I was just picking up on the body language as you said that, realizing that's kind of a hypothetical situation. There's a vast difference between the way you just said you're not able to go home and the way a more, how would we say, a more bureaucratic person might say, well, you're not able to go home.
Yep.
I mean, just the way you're saying it communicates the connection and the caring. Um, and we're running a little short of time, but I want to probe this a little bit in the work that I've done in newspapers over the years. I've run across a lot of folks who, by virtue of their work, they're dealing with highly stressful situations. We're talking about medical folks, ambulance folks, coroners, just all kinds of emergency workers. And I have seen, I'm going to focus on the nursing thing just for a moment because we have a severely disabled daughter in our house. And I've seen this go both ways, to where our daughter's situation would touch someone emotionally so deeply that they were unable to do their jobs effectively. Okay. That they had fallen into sympathy as opposed to empathy, whatever that distinction is. But then there's also those that you can tell that in order to protect their own psyche, that they've started treating the patient like a number or a
Mhm.
piece of meat or whatever, because it was too overwhelming. How do you navigate that middle ground to where you're caring enough to connect on a human level, but you're not lost in it so that you can maintain enough objectivity to be able to see what is needed in this
Mhm.
situation?
Well, I guess I would start by saying that if I was not able to find middle ground in that, I'm definitely going to the side where I'm sympathetic, because
Hmm.
I would much rather be that than cold and heartless.
Yeah.
I'll give you a story of something that happened years ago. Not too long before I left the therapy world, but I was in a care conference meeting, and it was our interdisciplinary team, and the patient was there with her daughter, and the insurance company is on the phone. The insurance company is going to say whether she can continue with her therapy, or what the because they're I'm trying really hard here to be very PC about it, but essentially what happened was the insurance company said, no, Mrs. Smith is discharging off of therapy next week. Okay, as we're all sitting in this room going, okay, before she came here, she was driving, she was very active, she went to church, she did things at the senior center, she was watching her grandkids from time to time, and now she can't walk 10 feet. She had a debilitating event happen, and we feel like she has good rehab potential. We just need to have more time and opportunity to get her there. And so I said something along those lines, and the insurance person on the other end of the line said very coldly, 10 feet. And I said, yes. And she said, well, it's 9.5 feet from her reclining chair in the living room to the toilet. She can go home, and she discharges on Monday.
Mm.
I lost it. I lost it. I'm advocating for my patient. It is my job to advocate for my patient. And I'm telling you, she cannot go home. She is not safe to, all the things. But I started crying in the meeting. I'm getting emotional about it now because I think about the injustice here. The injustice. Someone on the phone, several states away, dictating from something that was written on a piece of paper. She had no idea who my patient really was. And I was pretty much devastated and destroyed for the rest of the afternoon.
Yeah.
So if I had to choose, I'm choosing my reaction every time over that person's reaction. However, you're right. There is a balance there. But I think if you're coming from a place of love and concern, like, I have complicated relationships with my sisters, and I'm constantly coaching myself to say, that is your sister. You have got to come at her from a place of love, right? And I think in terms of humans, and don't get me wrong, because I can be fiery and I can be spicy, and and sometimes I am on it. If I think I've been wronged, or if I see, somebody being mean to the underdog. But I think in my advancing age, I want to be that person who constantly says, okay, no, wait a minute. That's another fellow human being. Come at them from a place of love, right? Right?
Yes, yes.
So am I there 100% of the time, all the time? No. Nope. Do I want to be? Do I want to be? Yes. Do I always want to take the high road? Yes. And I always want to be that helper person, right? Without compromising my own safety or my own integrity. I want to be that kind of person. Am I there yet? Probably not. Probably not. It's a process.
Yeah, we're all growing. We're all growing. Oh my. Well, and we're coming down close to the end of the program here, and I've enjoyed the conversation so much. I have not dug into what you're currently doing as a business, because you've spent a career in, I guess we could say, more institutional settings. You are in independent business now with C.C. Marston and Company, and working with, so how was it that you put it, championing with you through the beautiful journey of elderhood.
Mhm.
So tell us a little bit about what you're doing as a business now with folks.
So as a business, what I'm doing is advising, as advisory services mostly, where and 9 times out of 10 people come to me when they're at crisis mode. Hey, mom fell. She's going to have to go to a rehab setting. We just don't know what to do. What is our next step? And I certainly help you through that, right? Picking a nursing home, navigating that whole situation. Can she return home after? Is it safe enough? Do we need to look at modifying her home? Do we need to look at buying her a new house, something that's more manageable? So all of those intricacies and all those things. But what I would really love to focus a big part of my business on in the next 6 months to a year is kind of preventative. I feel like if people could come to me 18 months in advance and just say, we know that mom, some changes are happening with mom. We would love you to help us formulate a plan for if something were to happen with her. And so maybe that looks like helping you set up your medical and financial power of attorney. Maybe that looks like referring you to attorneys for estate planning and setting up trusts. That would also look like, okay, give me your top 3 potential nursing homes if she had to go into someplace, and let's go tour them and talk to people so that when something happens, if something happens, you're prepared. You already have a familiarity and a relationship with those homes so that if it comes, if it comes down to it, you have an idea of what's available and where you might like her to go. So all that whole gamut, that's essentially what I'm doing.
Okay. You you charge families, or is there insurance involved anywhere, or how does that part of it work?
No insurance, and I do charge families, but there's a charitable component to my business too that I want to be sensitive to the financial status of those that I'm trying to serve. And so I have a sliding scale, which I am glad to talk about with folks if they want to give me a call. But I'm also a really, really good resource for just telling you what's available in the community. And luckily, in Blount County, especially, we have some incredible, really incredible services out there. The Office on Aging and everything that they do with Meals on Wheels and Smiles, and there's some incredible veterans benefits and opportunities out there as well. Medicaid, Medicare, I mean, just things that you wouldn't think about. So if cost is a concern, let's talk about what resources are available to you for free or very low cost. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's not it. I mean, if I can do it for you and you want to pay me to do it, great. I'll do that. We'll do that. But if you can get it for free for somebody else who I recommend, then by all means, I want you to go do that.
Yeah, yeah. And so let's make sure people know how to get in touch. We have from time to time for folks on with us on video, put up QR codes. We've got a crawl going down at the bottom. You can always find out more, folks, by going to confidencecultivators.com and looking for this episode. What number did we say this was, Channie? I think this is episode 65.
It is.
So you can always get to stuff by going to donking.com/65. But you are setting up a website right now, I think, right? It'll be
Yes.
CC Marston and Company. I got that
Yes.
right?
You got it right.
Uh,
And I did say in the last episode that it was going to be up within the next couple of weeks, but I ran into a snag, so it's not up. My apologies. My
Life
apologies.
happens, and I certainly understand that one, but
It
yeah.
does, but they can always reach me through Facebook or email or just call me.
Okay, and if you want to put that phone number out in audio, that would be fine. I'll make sure that we get it in the show notes also. So how would
Okay.
somebody get in touch with you? What's the best way to do that?
Sure, probably through email, ccm at CC Marston and Company, just like it sounds. My phone number is 865-260-9898, or you can look for me on Facebook, CC Marston and Company.
Okay. And we'll have all of those in the show notes, folks, so you don't have to worry about writing it down. Although if you're watching this on replay, you can always back it up. That's one of the nice things about the podcast. So, because you are mostly working in Blount County, what would you say would be the extent of the territory where you could help people? I mean, if they contact you via the website, you may be able to point them to resources in their own community.
Got you. Yes, that's exactly correct. So really, I serve like all the way from Nashville over to Tri-Cities, um, a little bit into Kentucky, maybe even into the Carolinas. But also because I have family in Florida, Illinois, and like the Four Corners region, Arizona, New Mexico, Four Corners region of the US, I kind of say that those are my service areas as well, because I would love an excuse to go see my family. So, and I have traveled a little bit into Florida for North Florida for clients. Just because it was a good opportunity for me and it was the right thing to do for them. I didn't see my family on that trip, but yes, yes. So
Uh,
for the right situation, I'm definitely willing to travel.
that makes a lot of sense. This just occurred to me, and this is more of a curiosity question. As we've talked about with our, I don't know, our support systems, our culture, whatever, Native American populations face some specific difficulties and challenges. Are you finding that the kind of service that you offer for supporting elderly people, is it more welcome among Native populations, less welcome? Um, I could. I'm going to give a little context here. I could see, and this may be stereotypical, and if so, I apologize, but it may be that they are saying, no, I'm going to let family take care of that. Or I'm used to getting it from the government. I'm going to get it from the U.S. government. So I could see it going either way.
Mhm.
Is there any difference there?
One of the things that I see for my folks on the reservation, on the res, that's the slang jargon, is that there's a lot of intergenerational living, right? So like back in the day for us, like you would see those big, huge, grandiose Victorian mansions, and there was a reason for that because you had intergenerational living, right? So
Mhm.
the middle-aged folks lived there, their parents lived there, the parents took care of the grandkids. That's why the homes were so big. You just had multi-generational living situations, and you see a lot of that on the reservation as well. There is a huge we must take care of our elders push. But I also feel like sometimes there's resistance to I know this to be true with my own grandmother. She was in a situation where she needed adult undergarments. She needed to wear Depends, and she really resisted it, like significantly. Didn't want to until my stepmom actually said to her, "Look, just try it. If you don't like it, you don't have to continue with it." And then within a few weeks, my grandmother was telling a friend of hers, like kind of in secret, but the conversation was overheard, and we had a nice chuckle about it, about these adult undergarments and how they have been life changing for her. And of course,
Mm.
this whole conversation happened in Navajo, which even cracked me up even more because it's like last time we talked about how I feel like on the reservation they're decades behind where we are in the modern world, right? So so here she was kind of coming into the modern world with something that she had been resistant to, but in her native tongue, this language that is dying out and could potentially not exist in the
Mm.
very near future. She's telling her friend about this amazing product. So I feel like there is a little bit of resistance to some ideas, to some advice. Another loosely related thing, I can remember several years ago, there was a big push about food safety, right? Because in a lot of homes, they're still not running water or electricity. But the push was to get away from wood cutting boards and to use like the plastic ones. The lightweight, they're disposable, more easy to throw away than a really nice cutting board, a wood cutting board. And
Mhm.
lots of people were resistant to that idea. So I don't know that it is I don't know where it comes from. Is it because maybe the white man push for some of these ideas, if that's where some of the resistance is, or if it's just, well, this is the way that we've always done it. This is how we're going to continue to do it. I don't know where that comes from. Does that
Mm.
answer your
Mm.
question?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I didn't expect it to have a straightforward answer, and it's good exploration around the factors that could be involved there. I'm going to go ahead and put this out here for regular listeners. We are going to be making some changes to the alignment show. I'm going to take a hiatus, maybe in July, maybe in August. But a part of that is we're supposed to be a 30-minute program. I don't think we've ever done a 30-minute program. And so I'm going to revamp things. But I don't want to leave without having this closing question. Uh, Despite all the good conversation we've had, there's probably something that you wish that I had brought up, that I'd asked you about, that I didn't. So, what would be the closing there, the opportunity to talk about something that I haven't brought up yet?
Well, I have like 90 answers to that question, Don. We need more time. I don't know how we could do this in 30 minutes. You need like a series. Uh Episode 19 with, Bill Smith.
Yeah, yeah, that's a possibility.
If you're going to do 30 minutes. So I guess I would say this. I'm really I'm really focused right now on trying to change the conversation around aging. You stumbled over my tagline, and my tagline, championing with you through this journey of elderhood, it's specific because I feel like the stigma around aging is so significant that we are not talking about it. Nobody wants to talk about it. But are you youthening? Like, are you getting younger? I'm not getting younger. Did you find the fountain of youth? So
No, no, no.
none of us are getting younger. We're all aging. And whether we think we are or not, our parents are aging, our aunts and uncles are aging, everyone is aging. But we don't talk about it. We don't want to talk about it. We don't want to talk about nursing homes. We don't want to talk about our grandparents potentially dying. We don't want to talk about our grandparents' sexuality. There are all these components around aging that we just don't address. And I really want to change that. I want to reduce the stigma around all. I think aging is so beautiful. It's the most beautiful life stage. And so much fun. I mean, you don't have that part of your brain working anymore. You get to say whatever you want. You get to do whatever you want. And I think
And
it's
people are more
hilarious.
forgiving of it, I think, too. So
Yes, they're more accepting of your quirks and they're more
yeah,
forgiving.
that's just Don being old. Yeah.
That's just Dawn. That's just Dawn. But I really want to bring to the table just how wonderful and normal and natural it is. And we should be talking about it. We should be planning for it. We should be laughing about it. We should be loving about it. We should, I just want to change the conversation around it. So, was there something that you could ask me? No, but let's talk about it. Like, if you have concerns about aging, let's talk about it. Call me up. Anybody could call me up, send me an email, put a question on Facebook for me, and we can talk about it. I want to
I
change
bet
that.
you could probably start a podcast around this. Are you thinking about that?
I am absolutely thinking about it. Yes, yes. And not just that, but the components that come with it. Like your experience with nursing and your daughter, I want to talk about that. I mean, all the things around aging and the intricacies and the details and the everythings. I want to talk about it all. But yes, I would. Will you come on my podcast when I get it up and running, Dawn?
Absolutely, I'd be honored.
I'm going to hold you to it.
Very good. Very good. Oh my. Well, folks, we are coming up on a full hour on this one. So, Channie, we're going to have to wrap things up here. But I want to thank you for coming back on the show. And folks, be sure that you take a look at those show notes, donking.com/65, because we will continue to update that as Channie gets her website going. As you get your podcast going, I'll come back in here and put a pointer to that with these show notes. And
Awesome.
so hang out in the green room for just a second so that I can thank you properly. But once again, thank you for being here with us this week.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Bye.
Bye-bye. And we'll see you in just a second. So, folks, as we are wrapping this episode up, regular listeners know I do this fairly frequently. I get so deep into our current conversation, I forget to look to see who's going to be on next week. And so, yeah, I thought I had it in mind. We have another local friend who is going to be on, Lee Zimmerman. Now, he's here in Blount County, but Lee has worked in Nashville. He's worked with some of the major recording companies, record companies, and he's an expert in music, Americana music. He's written a couple of books about it. We're going to have a great conversation with him next week. So the conversations continue as we look at how people have brought their lives together to honor the things that matter to them. And that's where the inspiration for you can come in. You have something to give to the world as well. And in doing so, you will enliven your own life. But here at the Alignment Show, we're all about helping you to live your values so you can value your life. Be sure and tune in next week on the Alignment Show. That's it for this week's episode of The Alignment Show. What has it inspired you to do in your own life? Whatever it is, take action now and take the first step. It will help you to talk with a friend about what you're thinking. Share confidencecultivators.com to spread the goodness. And remember to live your values and value your life. We will see you next week on The Alignment Show.